Hello, if you're here for Beyond Google Analytics, how to measure and optimize self-service content with Peggy Sanchez and Shimon Shoval, you're in the right place. My name is Scott Abel, the content wrangler, and I'll be the host for today's show. First, a few things about the webinar. We can't access your camera and microphone, so you don't have to worry about any of that. It's purely a broadcast mechanism here today. You can ask a question, but you can't have a two-way conversation with us. So what's that mean? That means that during the show, you can ask us a question by using the Ask a Question tab located underneath your webinar viewing panel. It will open a text-based window where you can text a question. That question will come into a queue, and I'll monitor them and ask as many as possible of the presenters with the time that we have remaining after their presentation. Additionally, in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel, you can access troubleshooting information in case you're having any difficulty using the platform or would like some additional information about the BrightTalk webinar platform. You can get that there. Also, during the show, we won't be answering any polls, so we don't have to worry about that today. But there is some additional content provided by the presenters and the sponsor of today's show, Zoomin Software. You can access that content also in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. At the end of the show, I'll ask you to give us a feedback rating, which is a 1 through 5-star rating, with 5 being a high rating. And that measurement is we're asking you to give feedback on the quality of the presentation that was provided by the guests. So we'll remind you at the end of the show today. And speaking of the show, I've got with me my co-host, Megan Gilhooly of Zoomin Software. Megan, are you on the line? If you are, you might be on mute.
Yep, I'm here.
Right. She's here. Yay! All
How
right.
are you?
I'm good today. Thank you. Another show that we've got, and this one's exciting because you've got some connections to the folks. So why don't you start off by telling the audience member who you are and your connection to the topic, and we'll move right into the presentation with Peggy and Shimon.
You bet, absolutely. So I am VP of Customer Experience here at Zoomin. I've had a long career leading global content teams at places like Ping Identity, Amazon, AWS. Now I work with our wonderful customers at Zoomin to help them deliver unified content experiences to their users through the Zoomin platform. And so today I've invited 2 wonderful guests. First, I want to introduce you to someone who will show you how she uses specific content analytics to drive content strategy and also to impress executives. So I'd like to introduce you to the vibrant and always delightful Peggy Sanchez, who is Senior Manager overseeing technical publications at Cray, which is a Hewlett Packard company. Peggy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here because I really love to show off our analytics. I like to show them off like a new dress.
Awesome, awesome. And you're probably not showing off your dresses in Minnesota there with 9 degrees, although that might be a bit of a heat wave there, right?
Yeah, compared to yesterday it was, yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in North Dakota, so I know how brutal those winters can be. Awesome. Well, we're so glad you're here. I'd also like to introduce one of our analytics gurus here at Zoomin and a product management superstar, Shimon Shoval. He will be on hand here to answer some of your toughest questions about content analytics. Shimon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We're glad you're here. And Shimon is coming to us from Tel Aviv. I imagine it's not snowing in Tel Aviv, although I saw some pictures of snow over that way. Is it near Jerusalem?
Yeah, it's not snowing in Tel Aviv, but yeah, we have a lot of snow today in Jerusalem and in the upper north part of Israel, which is kind of nice.
Very cool. That's awesome. Very nice. All right. So Peggy is going to kick off the show for us today. She's going to do her presentation. Shimon will follow up to provide some context and additional information, and of course, answer any of your questions that you might have. I do want to just another reminder to the audience, please ask questions. You can do so using the Ask a Question tab located in the webinar viewing panel. So go ahead and find that, get ready to fire away on the questions, and we're going to get going. Peggy, do you want to begin?
I do. Thank you so much, Megan. So I want to just talk about our analytics and the way we're using them. And as I mentioned earlier, I love showing off these analytics. Our analytics to us are, there's such a good tool to demonstrate the things that we think are true or the things that we find out are not. So with that in mind, I'm just going to jump in here. So what I'm going to talk about is how we used to look at our analytics and the things we looked at. And then after we got our Zoomin portal, now how do we look at analytics? And those are our key performance indicators. So I'll be talking about what these analytics are revealing and where we're going. But before I get any further, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. That as Megan said, I'm the Senior Manager of Technical Documentation. And I've been in DITA for a little over 10 years. But I've been through several conversions. So from homegrown technical writing environments to DITA and a CCMS, from PDFs to HTML, from one portal homegrown to another portal, and now we're at Zoomin that has all the features. And we're also, I'll talk a little bit about the future, just a little teaser that we're looking for ways to publish outside of DITA. Just for the record, our environment right now is Astoria is our CCMS. We use DITA XML, and our authoring tool is Oxygen. So back in the day, like not as far as the 60s like here, but what we used to measure were only the things that we could get access to, right? So one of them was how long did it take to create our documents? And the other was how many documents did we deliver? And so we came up with a formula, it's a very, very simple formula, and that would tell us how long it takes to create a document in our department. And we could see after we moved into our CCMS that we actually were able to scale. So it took less time to create more documents, and we were a lot more effective. But that's the only thing we could measure. So that was then, and this is now. And so what we look at is not just the amount of content, although that is relevant. We also want to know search. How many searches are attempted? And by the way, search is sort of the holy grail, right? We always think we're going to uncover so much information from search. And what I'm going to show you is really surprising. So we want to know what our users are searching for, what's missing, what are they not finding, and who's using it, who's using search, and where are they coming from. So first off, Zoomin provides a really nice quick summary based on whatever time frame you set up in Zoomin. And by the way, this is from May of last year when we implemented until last week. So we have 31,000 pages and 904 publications that we have on our website. So, but I want to talk about search. So first of all, we always think, well, how many people are searching? I don't know about you, but have anybody in your office ever said, just kind of off the cuff, oh, I never use the portal, I can't find anything there, I can't use it. I always use Google. And of course, it's like a little dagger in my heart, but I understand. So, but now I can really address that. So there's a roll-up of information regarding searches. So we know from May of last year till last week, we've had over 12,000 searches. And what's interesting is this number here, 52% have a click-through rate after they do a search. And what that means is they get their results, and about half of our users click on something or they engage in some way. And from there, we also know that about a fourth of our users are actually using our filters. So they're refining. So for us, that was a little bit disappointing that more people weren't refining, because once you start drilling down, you can find a lot of information. So that told us some things that we need to do. But what about search success, and why can't users find it, right? So it looks like half of our the searches actually provide a lot of responses, but why can't they find what they're using? So we had the assumption that the analytics would show us all of the search terms that the user can't find, and it would give us a direction and a way to focus. So we would know, oh, they call this a different name than what we call it, you know, because we use a product name, for example. And then we'd be able to say, let's you know, change up some information here. But what we found was our search queries that did not yield results was only 7%. And we were really stunned by that. So when I hear somebody can't find something on our portal, then I mean, I'm all over it as far as like, can you show me how you're looking for it? And, you know, what were you looking for and that kind of information. And sometimes I kind of think people don't follow through a little bit or get distracted, or I'm not sure yet, but I have yet to find someone look for something and with an audience and it not show up. But wait, there's more. We now know what our users are searching for. So in Zoomin, we have a little widget that will show us the top 10 queries that the user does not click on. These are results from the search, but the user doesn't go to them. And so if this was your list of queries, you would recognize these queries as things that you're involved with, right? So I look at this and I see at least 4 of these queries actually have to do with content that's not public yet. So that content's in draft. So we thought that was really interesting because we didn't realize so many people were searching for these drafts because we only pass them out to a few engineers. So this was a little bit revealing. We want to know if why aren't they engaging in our content, right? So we get results and we know what they're looking for, but why aren't they engaging? So we know that about half of our users are not clicking through. So that begs a lot of questions for were the users, or were the results inappropriate, or were they too many, unclear? I'm not sure. So we have here a way to see what the user is searching for. So I'm going to just point out here, this particular query, I know because I work here, these are publication IDs. And I know that the user searched on that number. And I also know, and this is what is interesting, in the bottom row, you can see the frequency of that search was once since May of last year. And it did not yield any results. However, the user clicked on something. So now I'm just really curious, like what were they doing? So I click on the query, and this is what the user saw. So they plugged in 9727, but the portal said, did you mean something else? Because 9727 doesn't exist, but 9227 does, and that's what they clicked on. So going through these opportunities tells us a lot about what the best part is what the user saw, right? So when someone says they can't find results, I want to know exactly what they saw. Was it 0, or was there an opportunity for something else, or were there results that weren't related to what they wanted? So another thing we wanted to do is to know where our users are and who's using our content. Cray, before it was part of HPE, never translated. Everything was in English. But HPE does translations. And so when we start looking at whether or not we should translate our content, we should consider who our users are. So this graphic, this is a really nice graphic from Zoomin, and it's not a COVID map, but it does show us where our users are. And of course, the majority are in North America. And on the right side gives us a breakdown of where these users are. So almost half of our users are in the US, another 7% in India. We have users in Great Britain and Australia. So that tells us that we have a lot of English-speaking users. But as the numbers start to dwindle, Japan, Germany, do those numbers make sense to translate for? And I can give this information. There's more, that's why it doesn't add up to 100. There are more countries on there. I can give this information to the executive team so they can say yes or no. We are going to translate. It makes sense to do that. So one thing I want to point out is this is the type of information where all of the information is there. There's really not any research you need to do. It's voila. Whereas other pieces of information will engage you to ask more questions about what it is you're trying to find. So the one thing I want to tell you about analytics is that they really do take time and patience. So it's not just, I'm telling you, as soon as we got it, we were generating analytics, and there wasn't enough time that our content had been on the portal. So we need to wait through a few releases so we can start to see patterns, so we can start to see what content's being accessed, and again with the searches. And so trends start to show up. So I want to caution you, when you get analytics, take a breath and look for the future. But here's another thing that we can do. So the search query, these are searches that have solutions, have results. And if we look at it closely, we can see that Fortran, which was our first query, was looked for 38 times, and 38 times they found results. But what was interesting is only 28 times they clicked. 10 times they got results, say Fortran, and they didn't click. And the next one is even more interesting. So this is a doc ID. They found it, and 29 times they clicked, and 9 times they didn't. The third one, install, got 37 hits and 12 engagements. 25 times they didn't engage with the content, so we don't know why. And so this is right now one of the things that we're trying to analyze and figure out, like what happened here. So you got the results, and the results are good. What's going on? But these numbers on the right side are surprising. They were really, really surprising to us, and really interesting. So when you think about getting analytics or using analytics, what analytics do you need? And a better question really is, what is it that you want to do? And so I want to talk a little bit about how to determine that. So you have to decide which analytics are going to work for you, right? What's appropriate for your problem? And you need to think about the problem versus the solution. And let me give you an example. Some time ago, I believe it was Jarrett Spool, had done research on users want to find their information in 3 clicks. And if they don't find it in 3 clicks, they're going to jump. Well, we know now with more research, in fact, Jarrett Spool himself has found that if the users feel like they're on the trail of the right information, they will continue to click. And so if you're trying to find analytics to just count clicks, you're not learning anything from your users. And that's the kind of thing where you're looking for this, you're looking for the solution through the analytics, and that's not going to help you. So you also want to think about, do these analytics, does this information, does it allow you to make a decision, right? So the graphic with the countries that our users are from, that absolutely allows the executive team to make a decision on what to do. Other pieces of information require a little bit more research, but can you decide what you're going to do about it, right? So 7% of searches don't yield results. Is that a big deal? Well, in our case it is. That's over 850 people, or 850 searches that didn't yield results, and we feel like that's important. But it was surprising that it was such a small number. And finally, do the analytics give you validation, right? So like our assumption that we were going to find out some information from our customers, some key words or terms, then we could start inserting that and make our make all of our results happen. So do they validate that, or do they make you ask more questions, which the reason people don't click is our problem right now. Not really a problem. That's our analysis right now that we're looking into. So analytics can they can open doors for the things that you want to demonstrate. So if someone says it's not important, you can actually find out how many hits it has, or when do the users start using content after a release. And by the way, we found out that users kind of hit our new content about 6 weeks later than when we release it. And that gives us a lot of opportunity that if we have a mad rush, we might be able to delay a document for a short amount of time, because we know on the whole the users don't access that content for about 6 weeks. And that's the interesting lag time. But we can prove that. We don't just tell them. We can actually prove that. So I wanted to get back a little bit to the authoring that I mentioned a little bit earlier, that we were looking for a way to publish content outside of data. And one of the things we're looking at is working in Git. So our engineers want to keep content in Git, and we only want one single source of truth, obviously. And so when the writers are allowed to work in Git, and we can publish and get the documentation out that we need, our public content, with our branding and with the requirements that the corporate puts out, can we do this? Well, that's the great thing about Zoomin, I gotta tell you, is that it doesn't matter where your content's coming from, because it's going to publish. So Zoomin can publish it for you. So that's half the battle of adding an additional pipeline for content delivery. So those are the things I wanted to show you, and I wanted to be clear that there's so much more I could show you, but I'm afraid you'd fall asleep because I'd just be, going on and on, making myself so happy explaining all this to you. But the things that we're finding are wonderful. So if you have some questions, or if you want to share with me some of your insights to perhaps your analytics, I would love this, because we're all in the same boat, right? High tide raises all boats. And I think analytics are kind of opening a lot of doors for us. So that's all I have. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer those.
Awesome. Very, very nice, Peggy. We loved hearing that. Really interesting stuff. I love the fact that you kind of looked at analytics as a signal to dive deeper. So you weren't necessarily, we can't see you, Peggy. I don't know if you turned yourself off on purpose, but there you go.
I don't know what happened, but
You're back.
The gremlins in the laptop do that sometimes. But I love the fact that you were talking about, kind of looking at these analytics as a signal to dive deeper. It's not necessarily like you look at your analytics and you know everything you need to do. Sometimes it's just gets you to where you need to go. It helps you make decisions or see where you need to make decisions so that you can dive deeper. Also love the fact that you pulled out this idea of really focus on the problem, not the solution. And I can't tell you how many times I have had people come to me with a solution waiting for a problem, right?
Right.
That is not necessarily all that helpful, right? So I love that you called that out. And I also love that you called out this idea of whether you're using your analytics to validate what you're doing, or if you're using them to sort of invalidate what you're doing, meaning to see where you're going wrong and make you ask more questions about whether or not you're doing the right thing. So I really, really like all of what you had to say there. So thank you. We do have a number of questions from the audience. So I want to kind of hit on that, and then we'll, Shimon might have some answers. And I think somebody wanted to see some of the screens. So Shimon, be prepped to show us some of the analytics tool.
Hey, Megan, before we jump into the customer questions, I had one or two just based on the fact that
Go ahead.
I've listened to Peggy's story, her journey over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and it seems like every time I've had a show with her, there's been just a little bit more. Like you're making a little bit of progress. So, do you feel like this has been a phased approach that, and that setting your expectations? If you had to do it all over again, you come in and say, oh look, you might want everything at one time, but you're really only going to walk yourself through it. And each time that you discover something, are you uncovering the opportunity to learn new things you didn't plan on learning?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question, Scott. That's exactly what happens. Because there's so many different analytics available, and you can slice and dice them in different ways. And so we think that we want to look at this analytic, and sometimes it's just curiosity. What is this really telling us? And then trying to interpret, what does this really mean? And what does that look like from the customer side? But you don't have time, if you have a job, to go through everything and interpret everything. So you sort of have to pick out the things that either are the current problem or what you feel is a priority, or the analytics that speak to you. That mean, like the finding out what people see when the search fails. That was an aha moment. Like, wow, they should have got the right document, and that was kind of a warm fuzzy. That's what they saw. So the analytics provide lots of different viewpoints, right? Lots of different perspectives of looking at your information. And like you said, it's kind of like math. You learn something and then you got to learn something else, and then you build on what you're learning. So I think it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think over the years your project has matured and you've started to be more enthusiastic about these. At first, it was like, yeah, we need these, and it's a struggle to get them. But now that you've got them, I'm so glad that you're making all these discoveries. Megan, I know there's some questions about those kind of discoveries in the chat room. Do you want to tackle one? Then I'll grab one from Twitter here.
Sure, absolutely. There are a bunch of questions coming in. So thanks to the audience for sending these in. Let's go with a question for Peggy. First of all, thank you. Amazing presentation, they say. So awesome. Yep. Are you sharing analytics information with the management? And what KPIs are they interested in? In what frequency and in what method? Like, do you email them, PowerPoint meeting, etc.? Great question.
That's a really good question. So you can't just throw the analytics at them, right?
Right.
So you have to do some ground softening so say you've uncovered a problem, or you've uncovered something that you need to do differently.
Okay.
You need to do some ground softening to sort of prep them for the information. And so first I talk to my manager and I say, hey, I want to show you something, and I show them, and I have to say, I forget that I've been working on it for several weeks, and they're going, cool analytics, right? But what does it mean? And so getting my manager on board, and then determining, okay, what do we need to do? Do I need management participation, or their, the nod to move forward with something? And then that determines who I'm going to share the analytics with.
Perfect. One of the questions from the audience was, can analytics help you spot interruptions in the customer journey that might have been accidentally caused by our content decisions?
Wow. Well, to be clear, our documentation is just purely technical documentation for the users of supercomputers. Right. So it's not a designed customer journey where, marketing is first, and we're going to push them to some white papers, and then from there we're going to push them to tech hubs. So we don't have that. But that is a really good question.
Well, I think I see a webinar next year with this.
That's right. That's
a really good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I'll take the next one.
Yeah, I'm actually going to bring Shimon in here. So Shimon has really changed the way that we deliver analytics here at Zoomin, and has done a tremendous amount of work on that. So this question is for you, Shimon. It says for Peggy or Megan, but that's because they don't know that you know the answer. The question is, can you speak to the point of beyond Google Analytics and why previous or other analytics tools would not be sufficient?
Yeah, sure. So eventually, to start with, all other analytics tools are amazing. Okay, especially Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics or HIP Analytics or any other traditional analytics tool that is actually designed for websites. And I don't know who, but someone asked about the user journey and stuff like that. So these are the kind of insights that you can easily get or gain from user Google Analytics or any other traditional analytics platform, because they were built in order to provide some insights about the user journey.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not the case. Zoomin Analytics or the stuff or the insights that Peggy presented are actually built for content and not for regular web pages. And because of that, we know what a topic page is, what a content is, how we measure engagement, how we measure pages that have been viewed or pages that haven't been viewed, or searches. Okay, these are not. This is not an e-commerce site when you search for product. You search for content, so the use case is actually different. So eventually, you should always think of these two categories, the traditional web analytics and the content analytics, as complementary products and not as a competitors, and not something that should replace something else.
Shimon, would it be fair to say that the content analytics, the aim of content analytics is to measure something more granular than what's happening on a page? Because if you're only concerned with did they make it to the page and did they push the page's, sign me up button, then you only care about two things. But if there's 5 or 6 things on the page and one of them is getting a lot more play than the others, maybe knowing that would give us some additional information. So is that what you're saying, that the metrics that we need for content need to be more granular and associated with the content objects and not just the page or the website that we're on?
I'm saying that actually the metrics are different. Okay, so for regular websites, the metrics that you care about, which are extremely important metrics, are, for example, how many unique users, how many sessions, what is your bounce rate?
Yeah.
For example, which are extremely important metrics, and they are important for content as well. However, the content arena should have additional metrics. For example, as Peggy presented, whether the user are searching. Which searches yielded results, or to what extent the searches ended with a click, or the end user actually converted with the search click-through rate on the search results. Because eventually, in order to provide a good user experience, you want your users to be converted. You want your users actually to search and to click on the search result. And these are kind of the KPIs that on a regular website, like a blog or whatever, you don't really care about, and as a result, you don't measure. Same goes.
I would like to add to that we can see in the analytics the most popular topics that are being searched for, as well as the most popular publications, and so they're not necessarily the same thing. And that tells us that gives us a lot of insight to the important content inside a particular doc versus a whole publication that's being accessed at different points.
So you could actually understand the level of importance of the individual topics that you have in your collection.
Exactly.
Right. And I think Peggy and I both, one of our favorite analytics is this 2x2 that maybe Shimon, maybe you want to pull it up, a 2x2 that covers the popularity of the content, but it also shows the freshness, and it sort of pits the two against each other so that you can see what is this. So Shimon, I'll let you run through that.
It's my favorite.
Yes, it's awesome.
Sure,
I wish I had it at Amazon.
So eventually, following what I mentioned before about the KPIs, so not only we know what a web page or a topic page is, we know that the topic page is part of a publication, part of a book, part of a bundle, part of a version, part of a product, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we're not measuring only or tracking only one single page without the context, since eventually each topic page has its own context, and this is something extremely important to remember. And in addition to that, what we see here is a set of publications, which is, again, each publication or each book contains several, at least one topic page, and we're trying to provide some insights about freshness versus popularity. Meaning we are dividing all the books, all the publications into 4 quadrants: new content that everyone is reading, old content that everyone is reading, new content that is not popular, meaning no one is reading, and old content that no one is reading. Now, what is the within here? What in it for you eventually? So not only we know which topic pages have been viewed and so on, but also which publications are kind of old, meaning they were maybe not up to date, maybe not really accurate and so on. However, they are very popular for the end users because the products are extremely popular, or because there is a huge release and so on. So for example, what we see here is a publication which is kind of old. It was uploaded to the portal about 8 months ago, I think. And even though it is an old publication, the set of topic pages, however, it's very popular. Now, what in it for you as a content writer? You need to make sure that the topic pages within that publication are accurate, valid, and up to date. Same goes, for example, with publications that are new. As we can see here, they were uploaded like last week or 2 weeks ago and so on. However, comparing other publications that are not popular, maybe it's good. Okay, they're new, so obviously they don't have really a huge amount of page views. However, you may want to drive additional traffic to these publications or to that content and utilize some real estate within your docs portal in order to drive attraction, in order to drive additional traffic to that content. Okay, so these kind of insights, or these kind of actionable insights, actually can be easily gained from having one single view on that widget, and this is kind of stuff, or this is kind of insight that you cannot gain from traditional website analytics such as Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Peggy, there's another question for you as well. First of all, another person complimented you on your presentation, saying that you did a great job, so thank you for that. With Google Analytics, we run into some GDPR issues while trying to collect customer data in Europe. We weren't collecting what seemed like personal information, but it turns out that they were violating the fine print, that person supposes. Have you had any issues with GDPR regulations in your work?
No, I'd love to hear more about that. No, we haven't. And by the way, these countries that we see that have users, we actually know what system is there. We know who that customer is. And if it's a lab or a university, Germany, we know which one it is.
Right.
And so that tells us, it's okay. It's not just, we don't have thousands of systems out there, and therefore all of the users are interested in something else. We know what system it is.
So I think GDPR is probably another whole webinar, but Shimon might have a few things to just sort of quickly cover on this.
Yeah, definitely. So eventually GDPR is all about PII, or personal information identifier, whether a specific end user can be tracked. And eventually we are in a process of not storing personal information, meaning we are not storing PII. And by that, you cannot actually track the exact use cases, or the exact topic pages, or the exact actions or behaviors that the end user performed in the docs portal. In addition to that, each end user can actually opt out himself from being tracked if he prefers to. Okay, obviously this is not something we encourage the end users to do, because we do want to have the information, we do want to provide the insights, and since we do not store or track any PII, so there is no issue with that. But we do provide that ability to opt out yourself from being tracked.
Very nice.
Perfect.
So a couple, just some quick ones that I think we can answer sort of rapid fire. What is the characteristic to measure popularity in the freshness popularity matrix? And that's just page views, right? Yeah, so that one's a pretty quick answer. And then there's another one that I think is a pretty quick. Oh, go ahead.
Well, the freshness is based on the time frame that you're looking at.
Right. They specifically asked about popularity. They wanted to know what made it popular. So, and then they said, Peggy, do you have to avoid keywords or phrases that have become overused? Which maybe this isn't a quick rapid fire answer.
We haven't found anything like that. We really thought we were going to find new terminology, or I mean, not new, they didn't make up words, but terminology that we weren't using.
Right.
And it turns out that's not the case. We haven't seen anything that's like, oh, they call, a buffer something else. And
But Peggy, the functionality is there. In other words, you could, if there were words to be discovered, that would have been one way for you to know something you couldn't have known before.
Right. So it's interesting. I mean, plays into like taxonomy, right? And that's another area. So yeah, with the idea of taxonomy in our lockers, that we're going to learn something here, and it was that big surprise and satisfying, but darn, we don't have a revelation.
Yeah.
Well, the revelation was we got it.
That's actually a good revelation to have. It means you're speaking the language of your users and probably not confusing them as much as maybe you could.
Exactly.
Great. What have you learned about that from the analytics that makes you write your content differently? Anything made you want to change what you were doing?
Yeah, we use an about page on all of our publications. So we use an about page that tells you, basically the what bold means, what italic means, things like that. Okay. And so we're replacing that with our changelog first. And because if you pick a publication, it's going to open on the first page, not on the table of contents. And so consequently that tends to have more hits. And so we tease those out, and then we can see what else they're using. But it did cause us to look at the about page differently.
Well, that's great.
Awesome.
So that
ahead.
That was a value to your content team, not necessarily to the management, right? The management's looking for those KPIs that they care about, but this was something you could say, hey, we can improve what we're doing by learning from the data.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So important to have your analytics drive your content strategy and management, right? That's awesome. So somebody asked about localization. Have you considered that lack of local language docs explain low use in that country? And they say, in their experience, Japan is the country where you really need everything localized, even programmer docs.
Well, okay. My personal opinions about localization, I would love to translate. That's a whole industry, right? And that's a whole department to do that. So I'm partial to translating. I lean towards it. But like I said, we know the system that's in Japan, and we know the types of users, and so it doesn't warrant translating. I mean, for HPE, they translate a lot of things into Japanese, a lot. And we may translate at another date, but and I can say we have this many users.
I think that by having this analytics capability, though, you could actually A/B test this hypothesis that the person who's asking the question may have. So, for example, I participate in the Localization World Conferences 3 times a year, and I help select all the speakers to come in and talk about content. And we had some developers from Google and some tech writers from Google who had the assignment of making the content available in the Russian language for Russian developers. But as it turns out, they had page-based analytics, and they were showing that the Russian customers would just jump right into the English content. They might every once in a while go over to the Russian content, but if they could read it and get the gist, they never dove into the Russian manual. So maybe those metrics are important before we decide what languages to support and why.
Yeah, and I think going back to how this is different than sort of the Google Analytics, this is telling you that this particular topic was viewed 847 times in an entire year in a certain language. And that gives you information to say, does this topic need to be localized? Now, on the flip side, you can look for what content was searched for but wasn't found. And if what you come up with is this particular topic was searched for in, I don't know, Swahili,
Yeah.
and no one found it, then that makes us go, oh, I never thought about translating to Swahili, but maybe we need to, right? So you can get a lot of different ideas about localization and what's important and how to prioritize. So you know you're prioritizing your best translation costs for the most used translated docs. And the other ones, maybe you can, just stick it through a translator, and it might not be high quality, but if only 3 people a year are using it, maybe it's not a big deal, right? So you can kind of make management decisions that way.
So one of the things that have happened is that we've changed our budgeting in with HPE, and so if a department believes that something needs to be translated, they have to pay for it, and that's changed a lot of minds.
I bet.
We can say, this is how many users we know are in that location, and it's going to cost a certain amount of money to do these translations or to do all the translations that you want, and it changes their mindset. Like, oh, okay, well, what do we really need, or what is it that we really, really want?
Right.
And Peggy, you've got this analytical bent in the way that you think about this stuff, and I think over the years you've been able to develop systems that help you inform your decisions. So now that you have the ability to have access to these metrics, does it factor into your decision making on, hey, we're going to try something new, and since we have these analytics, we're going to be able to know a little bit more about, was Peggy's gut feeling, or whoever your idea person was, is it right? Did we do something meaningful and valuable?
Well, to be quite honest, I haven't tested that yet, but yeah, I'm always like, let's see, I'll bet you a beer it is or it isn't. And then I have to prove it, right? And and I really like to win, so part of it's time, right? We don't have a lot of time to do some searches like that, but I think that there's a lot of value there to say, what if we do it this way, or we do it this way, and let's see what happens.
Before we tackle the rest of the questions from the audience that are just coming in, do you feel like Zoomin does a good job of providing a dashboard view? It seemed to me,
oh my gosh,
in the old day, we used to struggle so much to get the numbers, and then we'd get them, but it'd be in a spreadsheet with a bunch of data, and I'm like, wait a minute, you just created a new project for me. Now I have to make it look good and make sense to other humans, and I got this huge spreadsheet. So do you feel like this helps you with your management job because all the data is available to you and on the fly?
It's so nice because you can just click on a widget, and if you want to pull it, you can export it to a spreadsheet if you need to do that. But the dashboard is great. It's clear what's showing, and there's graphical information as well as, like you saw with the searches, where it's the detail of the content. So yeah, I think the dashboard's awesome. I
want a dashboard for my life.
Yes, I want a dashboard to keep track of my 4 kids. Can I have that?
That would be useful.
Please, please. So I accidentally
Megan, I just want to add.
I just
want to add something to that question, since we discussed about Google Analytics. So I think that one of the goals that we're trying to achieve here is actually simplifying the data and simplifying the insights that can be provided in one single shot to our customers eventually. Because in Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics, you have so much data that you can retrieve, and you can deep dive and dig in and so on. And it's kind of cool. However, it's a bit complicated, and you need to invest. You need to invest time. And as Megan said before, as Peggy mentioned before about the patience. Okay, you must have a huge amount of patience in order to get some insight from traditional web analytics. And one of the goals that we define to ourselves is actually to simplify everything in one single shot, either in a dashboard or widgets or whatsoever.
Sure.
So you can get that information and get that kind of ideas of what you should do in a very, very simple way. And this is exactly what we're trying to achieve. And maybe I will share again my screen just for a second about the search that we define. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, that looks great.
So in one single shot, you can see the exact thing, the exact KPIs, or the most important KPI that we described before, such as whether the users actually click on the search results, how many searches they have, the keywords that the users are searching for, the top keywords, which keywords yielded results, which keywords didn't yield results, and so on and so forth. Very quickly, without the need to deep dive and search for additional dashboards or search for additional instances and so on. In addition to that, you can deep dive, you can interact with the dashboard, you can segment the data if you have the time and if you want to gather or to gain additional or deeper insights than the quick insights that we provide in one single shot.
Yeah, thanks for showing that, Shimon. I think that's really helpful. And it kind of goes back to something Peggy mentioned in her presentation. When we talk about unifying the content, and she was talking about bringing stuff in from Get and other places, we can not only unify the content, but we're unifying the analytics. And I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten into these battles with the marketing team or the support team about, no, my analytics are right. And they say, no, my analytics are right. No, right. Your page is not as important as this page because our analytics say this. And you look into it and say, well, but you're pulling it in a different way. And even though we're all using the same tool, we do it differently. So having a unified analytics dashboard can probably prevent World War IV, but for sure can take care of some of the political stuff that goes on. So that's good. Thank you for showing that. I did want to get back to, I accidentally marked something answered. So before I forget, I want to make sure that we answer it. Somebody asked regarding I think they're talking about the popularity freshness matrix. And they asked if the number of views is per a certain time, because they're supposing that like older content would naturally have more views in total than newer content, but it's not an all-time view. It's a 3-month view, I think. Is it 3 months or is it?
Well, what I was trying, or I didn't show it, but you can choose the time frame. You can choose the time frame.
Yeah, great.
And so then it's relative, right? So it's relative. What's old, what's new.
When you go to your banking software, right, and you say, I need some banking information, and then you're doing it for a specific tax year, so you can set December to December or whatever, and then that's the data you get.
Right. And so you would typically look at if something is 6 months old, it was published 6 months ago, but you're looking at a time frame of, let's say it's been viewed X number of times in the last 3 months, then every single thing you're looking at is a rolling 3 months. It's not, you're not looking at it in all time. Is this what you're showing, Shimon?
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm showing.
I think so. Good. And I wonder if you could, can you share these results with somebody easily, Shimon? Is there a way so that, Peggy wants to know something and then she sees something and she says, wow, my manager needs to see this. And, she doesn't want to take a screenshot of it. Can she share a link or some other way to get this information in front of people without creating another project for her?
So if her manager has a username for our dashboards for Zoomin Analytics, so eventually the answer is yes, so we can easily just send a link. And if her manager doesn't have a username for Zoomin Analytics, so she can easily, as I said, take a screenshot or download it to PDF eventually.
Oh, it's super easy.
Thank you for sharing that, Shimon. That's a really cool feature. It says there's a question from the audience that says, sounds like getting really effective analytics is a long-term rather than a quick project. This is inspired by Peggy's answer to Scott's first question. Can anyone on the show comment regarding possible low-hanging fruit to get management excited early about this?
Well, I think the low-hanging fruit is search, right? So you can see what people are searching for, and so where you want to put your attention and what they're not finding. That's quick. And for people to say they can't find anything related to Shasta, for example, and ours, it's like, well, I know why.
Yeah.
So, right. And so it's interesting how you have answers for things that you didn't realize only because you were looking through the analytics.
Yeah. I think it also depends. Sorry, Scott. It depends sort of where you are in your analytics journey. If you're in an organization that uses analytics a lot, then yeah, you have to find something that you can grab onto. But sometimes, and in many of the organizations I've been in, it's been like, oh, we can have analytics, or oh, our analytics are going to be unified across our multiple teams. Wow. Just that is enough to get executives excited, just to know that they're going to have analytics. Then you have to start showing things like search and the low-hanging fruit as you move forward.
And Megan, when Megan and I did a talk show yesterday, Peggy and Shimon, and we interviewed Ray Spannon from Oracle PeopleSoft about unifying their content in one place, and that was the focus of the show was that. And we asked him what was the thing that management noticed, and he said our customers kept asking this question: "Where is it?"
Yeah.
He was like, nobody wants to hear that I can't find the stuff and I'm frustrated and now I'm mad at you. So that was a low-hanging fruit that management said, well, can you make this where is it problem go away where they know where it is? And he said, okay, I can work on that project, making everything available so they don't have to ask where is it all the time. And the where is it question was internal, he said, not just external. So do you find that this also helps you internally? Because you're using repurposable, you're using repurposable content. Does knowing that these analytics help you, not just with the customers finding the information, but your staff?
Well, so for us, it's evidence that you can find it. You show me the search that didn't work, right? Because I can see all of them. And so,
Didn't you tell me you called some people out on this?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you told me that.
Well, yes. And so I had somebody who said, I never use the portal. I can't find anything. She goes, I looked yesterday or something, and it was like, so, well, really, I really need to know so we can fix it, right? Because that's what you matter. And so we went in to look at it and she did the search and well, that wasn't there yesterday. Like, what? I didn't do it. Try another one.
Well, at least you're keeping them honest there.
Well, yeah, because it's real easy to have a bad experience and then a blanket impression, which is a different problem, right? But I'm sure I'm not the only one out there who's been told, especially in tech pubs, that I can't find stuff there. I can't find it. It's like, well, sometimes you have to read it.
Yeah, there is that.
And support can tell you too if the information's in the content. I mean, they'll write us up if something's not in there, and so we don't have that kind of problem that it's not there.
We're running out of time now, so Megan, do you want to try one more question before we hit the breaks?
Yes, there's one more question. There's a not so serious one, which is someone wants your red bell pepper lamp behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, my lamp? Oh.
Yes. Yeah. This person says something my team is considering is once users find content, do they find it useful? We're looking at different metrics, engagement rates, feedback results, etc. I'm interested if you're looking at something like this too.
So one of the things we were looking at is how long does someone stay on a page? And we don't know what the norm is, or we don't know what it should be, right? What should it be, depending on the type of information it is that it needs, a lot of thought, or if it's they're just getting a procedure and they got it and they're gone. And so understanding how much they're reading it, that there isn't really a way to measure that unless you've got the eye thing going on. So it is a good question. So we have an average of what our users stay on a page. I don't know if that's, because there's a big range or a little range.
It's also important to note that if somebody is presenting help content, and I've preached this for years now, if somebody's presenting help content, do you really want them to engage, or do you want them to get an answer and get back to what they're doing? So you need to understand what engagement means. If engagement means staying on the page and getting to the bottom where they click for more information, then time on page is a great thing. But if help content is meant to get them back on their way, then you might want them to have low time on page.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that I would like to add to that question, which is Excellent one. Eventually, the engagement rates can contain several in KPIs or in between KPIs. Like how do you measure engagement, whether time on page, whether the user actually implicitly clicked on whether that was helpful or not, whether the user provided feedback, whether the user provided a rating between 1 to 5 stars and so on, how deep the end user actually scroll within the page. Okay, whether he has just viewed the page and left, whether he clicked within the page, whether he scrolled down until 60%, 70%, 80% of the page, whether that was a kind of hard bounce or hard readership model or soft scroll and so on. So there are plenty measurement or ways actually to measure that these KPIs or these measurements. A few of them we have already implemented, such as how many feedbacks, download to PDF, added to my docs, and some other actionable clicks or actions. And in addition to that, we are working on additional future KPIs, such as scroll depth, time on page, as Peggy mentioned, and some additional readerships models that we are now investigating.
Great. That's going to have to be the last word because we are out of time and we'll get cut off here in just a second. So I'd like to thank our special guest, Peggy Sanchez, for joining us today. Peggy, thank you for being a guest on our show again and delivering
My pleasure.
great value. And Shimon, thank you for making time for us in a different time zone and maybe a little bit uncomfortable time period of your day. So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate the depth and the examples that you showed today. And of course, Megan Gilhooly, thanks for guiding and making the conversation interesting and relevant. I appreciate that, and I know the audience does too. So thanks for joining us. And thanks, Zoomin, our sponsor today, Zoomin Software. I'll tell you a little bit about them. Leading brands use Zoomin Software to help customers and employees find all the answers they need wherever and whenever they need them. Zoomin takes all your content and makes it available in your documentation portal or maybe in your Salesforce or ServiceNow or inside of your product itself. And it provides you with actionable analytics, which we talked about today, that you can kind of learn more about your content and continually optimize the experience that you're providing for your customers. You can learn more about how Zoomin Software can help you do that by checking them out on the web at zoominsoftware.com. Also, check the downloads and attachments section of your webinar viewing panel for documents and other content provided by Zoomin. They have a great blog, and also I can recommend Megan writes a column every Friday and sends it out, and it's really great information, and it's insightful and interesting, and you'll definitely thank me for subscribing to that. Don't miss our upcoming shows. I'm doing Coffee and Content on February the 25th with Patrick Bozé. We're going to interview Mignon Fogarty. She's also known as Grammar Girl. She's kind of famous in the grammar circles, and we're going to be talking about the changing nature of the English language. You're not going to want to miss that show. And then myself and Megan will be interviewing Val Swisher on March the 2nd. We'll be talking about the secret of personalizing technical documentation content at scale. The show is really good and practical information that you'll get from a practitioner who just wrote a book on this, so you don't want to miss that show. And then coming up on March 11th, we'll be talking with Regina Preciado about making the case for structuring your images, which is kind of a new topic for us on the Content Wrangler. I hope you'll join us to get her thoughts on how we can use structure to make images more valuable. I'm Scott Abel, the Content Wrangler. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to give us a rating on the way out using the 1 through 5 star rating system, letting Peggy and Shimon know what you thought about the content of their show today. There's also a little field if you'd like to share some feedback. I know they'd appreciate it. Thanks for joining us for Beyond Google Analytics, how to measure and optimize self-service content, brought to you by Zoomin Software and the Content Wrangler. Until next time, be safe, be well, and keep doing great work. Bye-bye.